Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Slow the Fire podcast. My name is Devin, and I will be one of your hosts today.
Hey guys, I'm Trinity, and I will be your other host for today. Today we'll be discussing how the wildfires are affecting domestic animals and wildlife, and what we can do to aid and prepare them during this fire season.
San Luis Obispo is an extremely pet-friendly county, and it's filled with mountain ranges and agriculture land. This means plenty of livestock, farm animals, domestic pets, and wildlife. When California wildfires began increasing this year, my dogs were the biggest worry. I cannot imagine how stressful it would be trying to gather up everything meaningful to you in a moment's notice after receiving an evacuation order. That's why preparation is so important, but no one is there to prepare our wildlife. So, what can we do for them?
The wildfires have caused our local wildlife to be displaced, and although they may seem scary to you, they mean no harm. If you encounter wildlife that is obviously displaced or injured, the Pacific Wildlife Care Organization is a great place to turn to. I've reached out to them, and they're full of answers that you may have questions on regarding wildlife, with the exception of adult deers and domestic pets, such as birds, dogs, and cats. If you have concerns about domestic animals, the ASPCA and the Woods Humane Society are great resources.
So, how do we prepare? We'll be getting some information and advice on just what to do from Eric Anderson with Animal Services Division. So, let's hear from him. So we are here with Animal Services Manager Eric Anderson. Hi, Eric.
Hi.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself and the organization you represent.
Sure. So I'm the Animal Services Manager for the County of San Luis Obispo. I've been in this position for coming up on about 20 years now. And Animal Services provides animal care and control services throughout the County of San Luis Obispo, including each of the 7 incorporated cities. So not only as a county agency, not only do we serve the unincorporated communities, but we also serve Atascadero, San Luis Obispo, Grover Beach, Morro Bay, all the cities as well. We focus in our mission and responsibilities are primarily focused on domestic animal issues. We don't do a lot of wildlife stuff. That generally falls to fish and wildlife. The exception there is that if there's an issue that involves rabies and has a public health concern, or if there's an immediate animal welfare issue or public safety issue, and Fish and Wildlife agents aren't immediately available, then we will respond to deal with that. So a lot of times that has to do with something like an injured deer on a roadway, or maybe even a mountain lion, in town where the fish and game wardens are a ways away. Most of the domestic animal stuff we deal with is largely companion animals. Dogs and cats represent probably about 95% of what we work with. But we also deal with livestock and other non-traditional type of pets, everything from snakes and spiders to guinea pigs or rabbits and so forth. So prior to this, I was a veterinarian. I had a focus on small animal internal medicine and critical care, and graduated from Washington State University with my Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, and my bachelor's is from the University of California in Santa Cruz. So not sure if that kind of covers your general questions or you're looking for there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Veterinary, that's your background, kind of why you chose to enter this field. Then 20 years, it's a long time.
Yeah, well, and honestly, my focus had been on emergency and critical care medicine, and I did some time working in helping to run a large emergency veterinary hospital in the Seattle area, and then moved back to the Central Coast to be closer to family, and worked as a private practitioner here for a little bit. But then this job came available. It really wasn't at the time what I had expected to be doing. But it had its benefits and its attraction, and over time has become actually something that if you had told me 25 years ago I was going to be doing this, I wouldn't have believed it. But over time, it's actually become something that I've enjoyed doing, and a pretty rewarding job at this point. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Seems like, you have a passion for animals and ended up being a good fit. So this episode, we're focusing around the fires and how they're affecting the domestic pets in our county. And as a vet with background in that, this next question is actually more fitting than I would have suspected. What health risks run with the smoky breathing air and the high temperatures that San Luis is encountering right now?
Yeah, well, it's really not too different for animals than it is for people. Reality being people are animals as well. So, the things that we would think of being problematic for us are going to be problematic for the animals as well. So, we start talking about the smoky conditions and the poor air quality, that can affect pets just like it can affect some people. And the same advice that we give to people is what we probably give to pet owners to take care of their animals as well. As much as possible, we would encourage people to have their animals indoors. Certainly that works for dogs and cats and stuff. If you have horses or goats or whatever, that's a different story. But to the extent possible, keeping the animals indoors, maybe running the air conditioner, air filter, and so forth, so that you can kind of keep your air quality inside a little bit better. And then minimizing outdoor activity as well. So even for other animals like horses and so forth, minimizing exercise and those outdoor activities. So maybe they do have to be out in the pasture, but avoid asking them to do extra work or exercise and vigorous or strenuous activities or increase their respiratory rate and breathing. And then certainly any animals that have any respiratory problems, if it's if they do have asthmatic problems or um, maybe pneumonias or any other sort of difficult challenges with regards to their breathing ability, then those animals do need special care and attention, need to be watched closely, and may need to be consulted with a veterinarian to see how they're doing. And then the heat, of course, is also another issue for our animals, just like it is for people as well. Again, the more they can be indoors in the air conditioning, that helps out a great deal. If they have to be outdoors or air conditioning isn't available, again, same thing, minimizing activity and exercise, especially during those peak and hot hours, so that they're not forced to overexert themselves, being sure that they've got plenty of water and that they've got shade available for getting a little bit of cooling. And then fans go a long way for helping with animals as well. So, for example, my own experience, I've got a bunch of chickens, and so we hooked up their chicken coop with a fan. So when they're in there at night and it's hot, it helps pull some of that cool air through and keep the air moving. And in fact, we even put the fan outdoors with them. Same thing for our goats. That air movement helps to cool them down a fair bit as well. And then also, depending on the type of animal, you can provide them with some frozen treats. So dogs love Kongs with maybe some bouillon, like some chicken broth or beef bouillon frozen inside. And that gives them something really cold to chew and lick on and helps them cool down that way. I made corn popsicles for our chickens. So they enjoy that as well, and that helps them cool down also. Be aware of what kind of animals have special needs. So, for example, very heavily coated animals, dogs with thick and heavy hair coats may need special attention. You need to watch them closely. Rabbits are particularly sensitive to the heat, and these high temperatures oftentimes don't do real well, so you need to watch them real closely. If they're outdoors, sometimes one of the things that helps, and what we've done with some of our rabbits here at the shelter, is to set them up with ice packs so that they can rest on those ice packs and bring their body temperature down a little bit. So, it's really a lot of common sense stuff and being a little bit creative, give them something to cool off with, and think pretty much what would you want to do? How would you want to be treated, or what accommodations are you making for yourself and your family, and kind of extend that over to your
Right. Yeah, that all makes sense. What a fantastic advice about the frozen treats. I have two dogs, and I will definitely be doing that the next time we're reaching the hundreds. are always like panting when I come home. They'll love that.
Yeah, any of those sorts of things. Kongs make a great treat because you can plug the little hole in the bottom, stuff some bouillon or some peanut butter or whatever, and stick some of them in the freezer. And you pull them out, and they've got those frozen treats that'll last them for a little while to cool down with. And for other animals that like I said, the chickens or rabbits or whatever, you maybe get a little slice of watermelon and freeze that, or get some corn and put it in a muffin tin and put some water in there. They love that stuff.
Awesome. Cool. On another note, the increase in wildfires, has it affected pet displacement? More, animals coming into the shelter, either, from the community bringing them in, or, just officers out that are finding them. How has that affected animal services?
We've not really seen an impact along that line here locally. Certainly in the areas where the fires are, they are being challenged with dealing with the animal populations there. But the fires that we've had here in our area this summer have been relatively limited and localized without any significant displacements. Some short-term sheltering and so forth for people, but the big fires happening around the state haven't really manifested here locally with regards to animals roaming and that sort of thing. Really, what I've seen is probably a little bit more anecdotal about maybe some animals showing distress or nervousness. Certainly, they can smell the fire and smell that smoke, and it's sort of natural and instinctive for a lot of animals to become agitated and have sort of that instinct of concern and flight when that comes up. That's pretty much what I've seen here locally right now.
All right. And we are fortunate in that sense that our fires have been relatively small and quickly taken care of. So, there was a fire outside my house a couple weeks ago up on the hills, and I got a notification that we might have to evacuate, and it was really quick. So, evacuations can mean leaving your house at a moment's notice. How should residents prepare and plan for evacuating their pets and farm animals? Do you
Yeah,
have any advice?
yeah. Again, and it's really goes back to this idea that what we do for ourselves, we should be doing for our animals. So hopefully, people have some degree of an evacuation plan for themselves. Maybe they've got a go bag by the door in their vehicle that has a extra set of clothes, maybe some food and water for a little bit, important documents or all those sorts of things. And it's important that we do the same thing for our animals. So, if you're going to evacuate, hopefully you're going to take your animals with you. Once you evacuate, you're not able to come back into that area until it's been cleared. So you won't be able to come back in and care for your animals. In fact, actually, one of the primary concerns that we have about people not evacuating areas has been people refuse to leave their animals. And so if you don't have a plan for your animals, it's more likely you might not heed that evacuation order. And that places not only your animals at risk, but also you and then any emergency services workers, be it animal control officers, fire personnel, law enforcement, or whatever that come in and trying to have to help you then evacuate when it gets to be too late. So doing that planning ahead of time really is a key factor in a good response and helping you be prepared, protecting your animals, and also helping those people that are taking care of the fire to be able to focus on what they need to do instead of coming in and helping you with something that you should have done already. So right. As far as your pets go, it's the same sort of thing. You want to have a go bag for them. It should have a couple days worth of food in there. If your pets are taking medication, you want at least a couple days worth of medication in there with it as well. Whatever you need to confine the animal or keep it under control as you evacuate. So a leash and collar for your dog, a carrier for your cat, some food dishes that you can feed them out of. Maybe some treats or something like that, or a favorite toy or toy or something like that will keep them occupied. Those sorts of things. Just figure, again, if you were going someplace, what kind of stuff would you want? Think, okay, if I'm taking my animal with me, what do we need there as well? It's always a good idea also to have with your own equipment, documentation for your pets any health records that they've got, and usually keep photographs and description of your animals as well, because if you do become separated and you need to get back and reunited, having that documentation really helps. So have some photographs of your animals, have them licensed, get them microchipped, have their microchip number with you, keep that information all up to date and that sort of stuff. And that way, if we do find the animal separate from you, it helps us get back reunited with you as well. And then usually, the other thing that's really helpful too is, and that we really encourage people to do, is not just have a plan on how to get out of the house or how to get out of the area. And that includes your transportation too, right? So dogs, usually we can load them in the car, a cat carrier, maybe we can load them in the car. But, if you have livestock, if you have horses, if you've got goats or that sort of thing, have a plan for how you're going to evacuate them out of the area as well. And that may be a little bit more tricky, but having that planned out ahead of time, and those pieces of equipment that you need to do that with, whether it's, halters in a trailer or a goat pen or whatever it is, having that available so you can take them with you is a good thing. Then once you've left, the thing is you really need to have a place to go. And while there are shelters set up, the shelters that take people in, by and large, will not allow you to come in with your animal. And so folks wind up at the shelters and with their animals, and they're not able to go into the shelters, or they have to become separated from their animals again. So you can figure out where you're going to go, family member, maybe out of the area, if you live in the very north part of the county, maybe somebody in the south part of the county that's your family member, or even, a couple counties over or something like that. So that they're going to be out of that emergency area. Then you've got someplace to go. And again, that's another issue, because there's going to be plenty of people who don't have a place to go. Shelters and animal shelters are going to be set up trying to accommodate all of them. So the degree to which people are prepared with themselves and have a place for themselves to go, they're going to lessen the burden on us in how many people and how many animals that we do have to take care of.
All right. That is good advice. And it seems like the biggest advice is what would you do for yourself? And you need to do the exact same thing for your pet. So that's pretty easy to remember. My next question, you had mentioned the wildlife organization, and I don't recall the name that you said, but do you guys do any collaborative efforts or work with any other organizations as far as that goes?
Sure. Yeah, that was Fish and Wildlife, and so they're responsible for managing. It's this, California State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they're responsible for managing all of our wildlife and aquatic resources around the state. And so, where there are issues involving wildlife, it generally falls to their jurisdiction. We work with them a fair bit, and in any number of capacities. As I said, again, usually if there's injured deer or something along that line, it might seem a little cruel, but from their perspective and from a wildlife management perspective, a deer with a broken leg is really kind of nature just taking its course. And so their approach is that they don't interfere with these natural processes of life and wildlife cycles. But on the other hand, if that deer is walking around a residential neighborhood in the Atascadero, or even on a roadway, that sort of thing, while that might be nature taking its course in a certain extent, it certainly raises a lot of concern and compassion with people. And so people want to see some response to that animal. And if it's on a roadway, particularly a busy roadway, it's a public safety hazard because it's potentially a source of vehicle accidents and so forth. So in those situations, we'll have an officer go out and try to address that situation, which oftentimes, for those deer with broken legs means having to euthanize the animal. But we also pick up a lot of other injured wildlife that, are potentially rehabilitatable. And in those situations, those animals are transported to Pacific Wildlife, which is a wildlife rehabilitation center in Morro Bay. And we deliver a lot of animals out there for them to work on and hopefully get rehabilitated back to the point where they can be released back into their home and successfully survive out after that point. Those are the primary wildlife relations that we have. A little less frequently, things come up with marine mammals, and there's the Marine Mammal Center along the coast that does a lot of rescue and rehabilitation, particularly for things like seals and sea lions. And then there's a number of other animal organizations and humane societies, Woods Humane Society, Cal Polycat Program, Paws Cause, and Pounce, and things like that, that we work with quite a bit in terms of placing domestic animals either into new homes or trying to divert them from coming into the shelter and assisting owners and promoting spay-neuter practices and those sorts of things.
Cool. So you guys have a whole field of resources there for everyone. So San Luis Obispo, like you said, concerned citizens and compassion goes a long way. What are some of the ways that our community can get involved with animal services?
Well, there's a number of different ways, and so one of the things that we always promote is that people are looking for one of the things that goes a long way to helping us out. People are looking to add a pet to the family, and that are thinking that they're in a position where they can welcome in a new family member that way. We really encourage them to adopt that animal through the shelter rather than going out to breeders or pet shops and so forth. There's a lot of great animals that come through the shelter that are looking for pets. And quite honestly, I think sort of the public perception over time has gotten better, but there's still this thought that the animals coming into the shelter, there's something defective about them, that they're not fit for pet quality. A lot of times people have the idea that maybe it's just pit bulls and chihuahuas, and that they've all got different issues. And while certainly we have animals that come through that have some issues, a lot of those are issues that can be treated and resolved, and we work really hard to do that before they even go into a new home. And a lot of those issues are actually ones that might have been a problem in their previous home, but wouldn't necessarily be a problem in a different home. So for example, a small dog that doesn't like small children could be a great placement for an older couple that don't have any kids at home and maybe are looking to travel and are retired and that sort of thing. But even beyond that, the majority of the animals coming through the shelter are really excellent family pets. We get a lot of mixed breed animals, but certainly we get a lot of purebreds as well. So for example, my two dogs both came from the shelter here. I have a purebred Great Dane and a purebred Welsh Corgi. And so, they're typical of some of the animals that come through here as well. So adopting from the shelter is a great way that people can help us out, because that's really what we want to do, is get animals back into their home where they came from, or if failing that, we want to get them out into new homes and get them placed with new families. For folks that have a little bit of time that either maybe they're not able to commit to adopting, or they adopted but they want to go a little bit more and commit a little extra time, we have a lot of volunteers that work with us here at the shelter and can do different tasks and activities, whether it's coming in and just sort of walking dogs on a regular basis. We have volunteers that are working on dog training and taking some of the animals that we have in the shelter and getting them some training to help them become more presentable and better pets. So we might have a great, let's say it's a young border collie type of dog that is a really great dog that has a lot of high energy and kind of just sits and jumps and barks at the front of the kennel every time somebody walks by because they want attention. It doesn't make it a bad pet at all, but it just kind of may be off-putting to some people. So if they can teach that dog some manners to sit and wag its tail and look real happy when somebody walks by, that'll help that dog get put into a new home. And once it gets in that new home, it's going to have behaviors that will help it stay there as well. So, those are some of the activities that volunteers do. We have other volunteers that, help provide socialization for our cats. That's what we do in the shelter here. Additionally, some of our volunteers never even come into the shelter, or only come in very rarely. But what they do is when we have animals that have special issues, maybe it's an animal with a medical problem, we've just fixed a broken leg in a dog and it needs some nursing and confinement care, or it might be a young kitten that needs some bottle feeding and extra support until it's of an age where it can eat on its own and be adopted into a new home. Those volunteers are able to foster those pets for us in their own home. And again, if somebody might want to have a pet, but they're not able to make the long-term commitment, but they might be able to dedicate, 2, 3, 4 weeks or a month or two to taking care of an animal, then that's a great opportunity for them also. So those are just some of the ways that people can volunteer and help out here with us.
Oh, that's awesome. I've always wanted to do fostering, but I have two little chihuahuas. They're not too keen on visitors, but that is great for the community. I know people will be very interested in that. And what about donations, financial, material, or otherwise?
Yeah. Well, we're lucky in that we have a good operating budget, and the things that we really need to do, we're able to do, and are while it's not extravagant, we're not struggling to do the right thing for the animals in the shelter or out in the community. But there's also a lot of situations that we encounter that where animals might need something that goes beyond our normal budget, and might need some care that really kind of stretches the limits a little bit. And so we're fortunate that we have a donation fund, our Guardian Angel Fund, or some people call it our fund, that we receive donations for. And that money is set aside and goes exclusively to providing for animal welfare costs that go above and beyond what we would normally budget for animals that we have through the shelter or in the community. So, for example, again, we've had animals that a dog that's been hit by a car and has severely broken leg. Through that fund, we're actually able to go and provide for orthopedic surgery, the nursing care, and everything it needs to get that leg fixed and get it healed and back into the spot where it can be adopted out into a new home. And certainly that can run just for that one animal, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for that sort of process. And so those donations are really helpful for us in terms of being able to provide that extra level of care for the animals in the shelter. And it's one of the key things that has helped us be so successful in maintaining a really high live outcome rate and making sure that the animals that come into the shelter are placed, and that we can really minimize or eliminate the unnecessary euthanasia of animals in the shelter here. Our live outcome rate here in San Luis Obispo is about 93% for all the animals coming into the shelter. And that means, a little bit more than 9 out of every 10 dogs and cats or animals coming into the shelter is either going home into the back home or going out into a new home with its owners. And that includes those that have been, so physically injured that, they're not recoverable, or maybe those that have temperaments and behaviors that are so aggressive that they can't be safely placed out into the community. So it's a pretty good and actually it's a very good success rate that we're pretty proud of. And part of that is management and our philosophy on how we manage the animals, but a large part is having the resources that we can to put into helping those animals out. That's where those donations come in. Additionally, we have another fund that is the Community Animal Welfare Fund, and that's administered through the Community Foundation in San Luis Obispo. And that's really larger donations and bequests that we've received. And that money is set aside as an endowment, and donations can be made there through the Community Foundation. And that endowment then gives us a certain amount of money every year that we can then put out in various ways to help promote pet and animal welfare around the community, whether it's issuing spay-neuter vouchers or things along that line. So that's really the financial assistance. And then, material assistance, we do take some donations in at the shelter normally. Now with COVID during the last several months and really into the foreseeable future until that lets up, we're not taking in donations here directly. But generally speaking, the donations that we receive at the shelter, the primary thing is going to be blankets and towels, which we use for animal bedding. And we can take those as long as they're not quilted or stuffed blankets that have ticking inside of them, because the dogs tear those apart and sometimes swallow the material. Same with pet beds. And they're also difficult to launder. And then electrical blankets we don't take because of the wiring that's inside them. But your standard blankets and so forth, towels, we always are accepting those just about. We don't take pet food. We feed a specific diet, so we want to make sure animals have a consistent diet here at the shelter. But folks that do want to make other donations, we do have an Amazon wish list. And so on there are various toys and supplies that we use in the shelter to kind of promote animal welfare and provide some behavioral and environmental enrichment for the animals while they're here.
Awesome. That is amazing. Um, it makes me so happy that we have such a high turnover rate as far as getting dogs adopted. Yeah, it just makes my heart tingle. Yeah, so we'll have that link there for Guardian Angel Fund, Community Animal Welfare. We're also gonna put the link to the Animal Services website where our listeners can find more information on volunteering, community service, events, whatnot. Um, I really appreciate your time. This has all been such good advice, amazing information.
Yeah, I throw out, we also have our Facebook page. They can just search San Luis Obispo County Animal Services on Facebook. And there's a lot of posts there about animals in the shelter and a little bit more detail on those animals. Certainly on our website, you can go see the animals. And then usually there's a few of them that are highlighted on Facebook with a little bit more information or some videos and that sort of thing as well. And we do have a Twitter page as well. It's pretty much an alert page. So if you subscribe to that, it'll send you some alerts that basically anytime an animal comes into the shelter, if you're looking for a lost pet or you just want to know what we're getting in, it'll send out a tweet that tells you, hey, this animal, a black and white border collie from Templeton just came in. But it also sends you an alert every time anything gets adopted or goes home as well. So kind of like to celebrate those outcomes also.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so we'll have that for all of our listeners. All right, Eric, it has been such an honor having you here, and we really appreciate your time. And we really appreciate everything the Animal Services does for our community.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate you having me.
All righty. Well, we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot.
We have provided links for the pages and resources covered in this episode. The more prepared you are, the less you have to worry if an evacuation is called for. Your family, your pets, and your home will all be safer because of it.
We hope this information was useful to our listeners and that together we can prepare, protect, stay well, slow the fire.
Thanks for listening.